You're listening to BQN. Assimilate the audio.
Welcome, listeners, to another episode of All Good Things, a Star Trek Universe podcast here on BQN and the Fandom Podcast Network. I'm your host, Kelvin, and with me today are Christos, Amy, and Mark. Hi, guys. How are we doing? How are you doing, Amy?
I'm doing great. Not as good as Christos since someone went to the Picard premiere, but I'm excited to be here to talk Star Trek.
Fantastic. Mark, how are you doing this week?
Oh my God, I'm covered in paint and all kinds of art materials. I've been going crazy the last couple of weeks with getting ready for, Picard season 3, which is pretty much to be covered by most of the shows here on the network, and that means a lot of art.
Indeed,
but it's been fun.
So, Christos, tell us, but don't tell us. How was it? We all want to know.
I think the best way I can always sum up, besides the fact that it was a perfect evening, as I've described it, having now seen the first 2 episodes, Picard season 3, so far I can say it's everything I think we were hoping for so far. It's just the first 2 episodes are like, wow. So,
wow.
Yay.
I mean, you can't get a better endorsement than that from a lifelong Beverly Crusher fan. So technically this episode drop when the episode does. So there won't be any spoilers, but it would spoil it for the 3 of you. He will kill you. So no more spoilers.
Oh yeah. Well, you'll still have to wait another week for episode 2.
Indeed. Mark?
I think the real test is going to be Joe Keegan. I'm being honest, I'm not even throwing shade, but Joe Keegan has been very harsh on Picard season 1 and 2. And obviously we all know how much he loves and adores TNG. So if he gets the stamp of approval on season 3, then I think that Terry Matalas did it. I mean, I'm going to love it either way, so I think I'm biased. But if Joe likes it, wow. Let's see.
So Amy and I had a chance to chat with Joe yesterday on the Hive Mind, and I have high hopes that Joe will love at least the early part of season 3. I obviously can't say the whole season, but I think he's going to be back in the fold.
Ooh. So we're all going to have our popcorn ready to listen to Joe on Galaxy Class next week. Yeah, be kind with him, Amy.
Yeah.
Excellent. Right. Well, shall we have a look and see if we've had any feedback on last week's episode, which was our episode 108 Picard season 3 pre-watch playlist. Christos, has anybody special left any feedback anywhere?
Well, I think our own Mark White got like the best compliment that one could ever hope to get, and that is a shout out from Miss Gates McFadden herself, who has actually asked for a copy of the artwork from our previous episode that Mr. Mark made himself. So
wow. Congratulations, Mark. How do you feel, Mark, after getting such high praise?
It's one of those things in life, like winning the lottery. I can't even describe the feelings when Christos posted that. The feeling that just washed over me, and just a shock, and just like I'm getting emotional now thinking about it. It's just, when I was a little boy, she was just everything to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, everybody knows, I love Geordi and I love the dynamic with Data, but Gates really, for me, like she was like another like mom figure to me. When I was a kid. And so to get that praise from somebody that you looked up to for so long as like a parental figure and a role model means everything. Yeah, it was great.
Well, Mommy wants to put your artwork on the fridge. So well done.
Yes.
Amy, what did she say? What did she leave? It was on Twitter, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. And I have a sneaking suspicion, because Christos and Gates are a little bit tight on Twitter, that she probably found it on your wall, Christos. That's my hunch. And she said, "How can I get this artwork for my wall? So gorgeous." Oh my gosh. Like, she wants it in her house. Come on. That is so amazing. Mark, I am so excited and happy and just joyous for you.
Another user, Zelda McGregor, went on to say, "This is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." So well done. A career in art beckons, Mark. You're wasted on all good things.
No.
Well, and we can tease that we don't know how we'll distribute, but there may be limited edition prints here coming soon of that 108 artwork. Stay tuned.
Ooh. Pressure's on now, Mark. You've got to maintain this high every week.
It came from, the art, because I have essentially a week between episodes. I'm sort of limited in time with what I can do. So I've had to get really creative with it. But it came from a need to have something different from all of the promotional materials put out by Paramount, because all the podcasts are using the official artwork. And I'm like, well, for all good things, we should be special. We should do something different from what every other podcast is doing. So I wanted to create something unique. And so I just got what I could from all of the various promotional images that have come out, and I put something together that's just for us.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Listeners, Mark is very meticulous about that. It's very often that he will start on something and then show it to the rest of us and ask for input. And he's just so trying to get it right. But he hit it out of the park with this one. So
absolutely.
Congrats.
Round of applause. So from art to geography, Mark, do tell us what's going on in the world.
Well, now it's time for All Good World.
From Las Vegas to Boston, USA to Canada and South America. From the United Kingdom to South Africa. From Russia to Australia, the South Pacific and beyond. This is All Good World.
We highlighted a different location around the globe this podcast has reached. In today's episode, we'd like to give a special shout out to North Macedonia. Now, fun fact, I didn't even know this was a country. So I saw it in our list and I was like, wow, I've never heard of North Macedonia as a country. Well, that's because it's relatively new. Officially, the Republic of North Macedonia is a country in Southeast Europe. It gained independence in 1991 as one of the successor states of Yugoslavia. North Macedonia is a landlocked country that is geographically clearly defined by a central valley formed by the looks like Vardar River and framed along its borders by mountain ranges. The terrain is mostly rugged, located between the Sar Mountains and Osogovo, which frame the valley of the Vardar River. So that is really cool. We have some listeners in North Macedonia. So, hey, guys.
Hey, so as a
Hey.
Brit, I know where North Macedonia is because of the Eurovision Song Contest. So they quite often enter, and so yeah, I know those
Really?
guys.
Oh, that's awesome. They get some talented musicians there in the mountains, I guess.
All throughout Europe, we do.
Yeah, cool.
Right, okay. Let's have a look at this week's topic. So this week, we are going to continue our genetic engineering series, part 2, with a special focus on the episode from Deep Space Nine, Dr. Bashir, I presume. So, Amy, do you want to help us out a little bit with an episode synopsis?
Well, sure. Deep Space Nine receives a special visitor, Dr. Louis Zimmerman, of course, played by the Robert Picardo, who informs Julian Bashir that he's been selected to be the model of the new LMH, long-term medical hologram, not to be confused with the EMH. So during the development, Dr. Zimmerman uncovers some secrets from Julian's past, or Jules' past, which could put his career and freedom in jeopardy. Elsewhere, Rom continues to attempt to woo Lita as she is tempted to leave DS9 for a career on Jupiter Station. Can Rom stop her?
Thank you, Amy. Ooh. So I'm really excited that we're not only excited that we're doing a Deep Space Nine episode this week, but what a great episode. I love this episode. But But what about the rest of us? Clearly, this is a huge part of character development for Julian Bashir. Christos, what do you think of the episode? Did you like it? Did you like what they did with Julian, with this aspect of his character?
Yes. I actually have been warming up to Bashir. I always liked Bashir. He was just kind of like okay to me. But I've been doing a lot of rewatching a DS9 all over the series, and I just jumped from season 7 to season 4, but back to season 6 and all over the place. But I'm really growing to like Bashir more and more. I feel like he's a really, I don't want to say underappreciated character, but definitely was pretty annoying in the early seasons. But I feel this episode is a big turning point, because talk about like a big left turn with the character. Suddenly, there's this huge thing about him that obviously has implications that we're still talking about with Strange New Worlds and Una and things like that. So like, it's still like huge. But it's I like the episode, and I really like that it adds a huge level of development, and I think it makes the character far more interesting. And that's what I really like about this episode the most.
Fantastic. What do you think, Mark?
I agree with Christos. I think the writers early on didn't really know what to do with him. He was definitely, for like the gay audience, kind of the space twink. And he had that thing going on with Garrick, and gotta love that. But really, he didn't. Aside from that, didn't have much going on. They didn't know what to do with him besides just being sort of eye candy. And I think they started in the later seasons, and you can see from this one, really trying to figure out what to do with him and really building his backstory in a really cool and unique, interesting way. I like what they did here. Eventually, they had that he was tied up, I guess, with Section 31 and that whole thing. That was interesting as well. But sort of this was like the beginning of, I think, his real growth on the show. And he had some great dialogue in this episode that I loved, some great exposition. It was cool. It was a cool watch. I really enjoyed this episode.
Amy, did you enjoy it?
Yeah, and sort of with Bashir, I remember when I did my rewatch a couple years ago, and yeah, like Christos was saying, it was annoying at the beginning, and they didn't know what to do, like Mark was saying, with Bashir. And we get this amazing episode that has so much depth, so much context. We learn so much. I mean, not only with Bashir and the genetic engineering and his relationship with his parents and how complex that is, and the hurt that he has. And I also really love the Ram and Lita story and how complex and difficult that is. And they each show the struggles so well in this episode. And then that makes me wonder, this is what, season 5? Late.
Yeah.
Season 5.
Yeah, 5. We are a good 2/3 of the way into series 5 by this point. And to me, that creates a little bit of an issue of, it's such a bombshell moment for the character that to find this out so late into the series run, I'm like nitpicking. I'm thinking, oh, what continuity errors is this? They make a joke, they write it in about the darts and the hand-eye coordination, like, oh, you should have been playing better all along. But what about other things, like when he couldn't find a cure for the quickening in season 4? Surely he would have been able to find a cure much quicker, or any aspect of peril that Julian Bashir's previously been in. Would that have had to be retconned in any kind of way? So that's the only factor I have about this, but I do love it.
I'm not sure that they would really need to retcon that, because, even though he was genetically modified in a way, I don't get the impression that he was genetically modified in the Khan Noonien Singh kind of way. Like, he was slightly modified and improved a little bit, but I don't think that they went full, God!
What do you think, Christos?
Well, genetically modified doesn't mean perfect, so just because he couldn't find a cure for a disease, for example, doesn't mean, that doesn't make sense, in continuity. I feel like, you can be genetically modified and still not be able to solve a problem, and that's okay. It's a big problem to solve, So I don't think it creates huge continuity issues. Maybe there's going to be a little thing here or there, but I think they realized they needed to do something with this character. And that's what this episode was meant to do. And I think it set up a lot more for what came after, like you said, with the Section 31 stuff and everything, that it made it was far more good than harm to have this revelation.
You mentioned Christos about later in the franchise with Una, but in reading some of the show notes, Ronald D. Moore mentioned that they hadn't even mentioned the eugenics war at any other point in Star Trek, or about augments or genetic engineering, and this was the very first. And think about everything that came afterwards with, Soong on Enterprise with the augments, and Dahl in Prodigy, and it's literally been in every other franchise since. So it's such a turning point. It really is. Amy?
So I have a question about that. When the parents took Bashir to that planet, something Prime, Imzadi Prime or something, what was it?
Adigion Prime.
That one. Is that the same planet that they go to in Prodigy?
Ooh.
Because I felt like Prodigy had something Prime where Dahl got modified.
Oh, I'll need to go back and fact check that one, but I don't think it is. If it is, that's a huge
Mr. Trexperts does not know the answer to this. What?
Prodigy's not Berman era. It's not in the hive.
I'm just giving you a hard time.
Don't make me get my crown out again, Christos.
Oh boy.
So bringing us on to Julian's parents. So this was what I felt the heart of this show. This episode was so great because it really balanced comedy moments and really deep heart. And yeah, just reconciling what Julian's parents did to him as a child. How are we feeling about that? Do the ends justify the means? It's all good. It's give our character a little bit of spice to him, but just consider, here's two parents that took their child away for illegal experimentation. What do we think? What do you think about that, Christos?
I've given this a lot of thought, because you talk about, fixing something with a child, fixing a broken child, if you want to call it that, like, quote unquote, he wasn't as smart as the others. And I think of this, parents and genetic manipulation. What if Julian were gay and his parents took him to be genetically altered to make him straight? How would we feel about that? If that were, well, it's more than conversion therapy. Conversion therapy is all, psychosis and whatnot. This is actually going into your genome and changing who you are fundamentally. That really can't be, just undone or overcome. I mean, you hear all the time of gays that were sent to conversion therapy and it didn't work, or, they get away from their parents when they turn 18 and then they go be themselves, that's just awful in itself. But this is like fundamentally changing something about a person. And, you can be pragmatic and say, well, look, he turned out great. He's super smart, blah, blah, blah. But, he never got a chance to be himself. Like Jules says, you never even gave him a chance.
Yeah.
But as Miles says, that didn't change your personality. That didn't change your passion, your integrity, your work ethic. Like, that is him. So did it really change his identity fundamentally? I think fundamentally, those traits are what's going to be consistent.
Isn't it just a bit of a lottery, though, with this genetic resequencing? We see all of the other characters, shall we call them, that have gone through it in statistical probabilities, and then Serena Douglas later on in that episode. And clearly that has had a huge effect on their personality, whether it makes them, hypersexualized, like, is it Lauren, her name is, or catatonic, like Serena. Julian really looked out that it went right for him. So, should he be grateful, or is this just parents taking a huge gamble
I always felt like Bashir always came across as arrogant, and I think super smart people can sometimes be arrogant as a result of a superiority complex. So was he altered? I mean, yes, they peppered all that stuff in with Miles to kind of smooth it over, make him feel okay or make it okay. But, really, was Bashir not, was his personality really not altered? Question mark. I can't say that it was or wasn't, but, he does. That was part of the beef about Bashir early on in the series, was that he did come across as very arrogant, and he was written that way. So I would think somebody, and that's something, like I said, a trait that some super smart academics can come across as that way, because it comes across as superior at times.
Yeah. And don't they say superior intellect breeds superior ambition? And that was kind of the hallmark of Khan. And so it's a fine line. Mm-hmm. What do you think, Mark, about these pushy parents?
Well, my head was going to, would there be a scenario where if I had a child, would I do what the Bashirs have done? And I want to say no, with the exception that if, honestly, like we're talking 3rd, 24th century, whatever, if they could detect it early on that the kid had some fundamental, irreparable, brain damage or whatever that could be fixed, or they would, have some issue that would affect them on a fundamental way their whole life, that had the ability to be fixed, yes, I would, but not going so far to make them like a superhuman, right? And not do it in a way that, if somebody just has like ADHD, that's not something that you need to go in and, I guess, genetically fix, or somebody that might be slower at math, go in there and fix. But if somebody, has some sort of, brain abnormality, which would cause them to come out extremely mentally slow, being able to push a button and make them essentially at the speed as their peers, I would probably do that if I could push a button. Yeah.
Interesting.
I don't know about the rest of you guys.
Interesting. What do you think, Amy?
Well, it's interesting that you go there, because I was thinking about this also, and I'm like, none of us have children. So we don't really know exactly what we would do. And that moment where his mom is like, you can say whatever you want. It was illegal. It was immoral, but you cannot say that we were ashamed of you. And to have that realization that it's like, yeah, he was feeling like his parents were ashamed for all of these years. How old is he in this episode? 27? I mean, he at least...
No, he's over 30. He was 13 season 3. This is season 5. 32.
So,
but he's still a space twink.
He found out at age 15. So, there's a good 17 years of him feeling this shame and carrying it around with him, that his parents weren't happy with him. And then to finally have this come out, that it's like, we were never ashamed with you. We wanted to give you the best life possible. And we made a mistake. And finally, they get to own up to it. But their intent, I think that changes their relationship. Christos?
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, the intent was there. I just think there's a reason why this is, I guess, banned, I think, is where I was going. Because what if you had other less, reputable parents who want to change something else? And like I said, whether it, could be, like I mentioned, a gay gene, or could it be, I mean, there's so many other things that, you could genetically manipulate: physical appearance, physical capability, which we saw with Khan. So I don't doubt that the parent's heart was in the right place. I just think that, what if it were something else, and, you fundamentally change who somebody is. And I think that's the danger of it. And I think it's implied why it's illegal. But I don't think the parent's heart was in the wrong place.
In relation to what we're talking about, what about kids today that you can tell, like maybe in the womb or whatnot, that they have two genders. And it's up to the parents to sort of decide which one to go with, which happens,
Yeah.
sometimes.
I
How do we feel
think
about that?
Controversial, Mark. If I see any of my friends who are pregnant and they say they're having things like gender reveal parties, I like roll my eyes like a slot machine, because I'm like, that is just so it's just not the done thing even in this day and age, and I find it quite distasteful. So even if we're not talking about those kind of atypicalities in kind of fetal development, more just parents deciding, pushing gender, pink clothes for the girls, boys' toys for the boys, even just being gay, we know we didn't even fit those models. So it happens now. I don't feel, and then you've all backed us up there just by you saying, Christos, that the parents' heart was in the right place. They weren't demonized or made into villains in this episode. In fact, they're just kind of losers in a way, really. They're saying, I'm your legacy, I'm your greatest creation. But if you think about Voyager, when B'Elanna tried to genetically modify Miral in the womb to remove the cranial ridges so she wouldn't get bullied like she did, it was a very, very different narrative. And it was almost like B'Elanna was demonized and she had to reprogram the doctor to make him do it. And Janeway and Paris were trying to stop her. So that was very villainous almost. Whereas this was just accepted that, yeah, the heart was in the right place. It all worked out. So there was only a few years between these two episodes.
What a great shout out, Kelvin. Yeah, perfect to look at both of those episodes. That might be another one that we, watch in the future for this series.
Blurs the lines this between the genetic engineering and the medical ethics almost, doesn't it? Really, that it covers both subjects.
Well, I think that's the heart of it. This is all about ethics, right? And I always felt, just real low key, real fast, that episode of Voyager was, at the time, season 7. Like, B'Elanna had already come to terms a lot with her Klingon heritage, so I thought that was a weird, kind of out of place thing for her to be doing. Like, that should have been like a season 2 story for B'Elanna, not a season 7. But anyways, back to Deep Space Nine. Yeah.
It would have been a bit more dramatic if Tom Paris got her pregnant in season 2.
Very much so. Very much so. It was just like, I thought that was a reach to make an episode for Voyager at that point. Yeah.
So did you think that it was logical for Julian to think that he would go to prison, that he would lose his Starfleet commission?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't his choice.
It wasn't. But again, sorry for keep using the gay analogy, but if you think of in the service before, like, don't ask, don't tell, if someone was gay and you're in the army or the Air Force and it came out, then you were out. So
That's true.
It's similar. It's not who did the deed. It's just you don't fit the model. You're not allowed in this club.
Right. I think it was right for him to think that he could have been kicked out of Starfleet for sure, especially since he technically lied. He knew he was genetically modified when he applied. So he did lie. For him to go to jail, I don't think, no, he didn't commit a crime, to your point. His parents did. So I just think he would have been kicked out of Starfleet. And it's still a little suspect. It's a little kind of like when we wrap things up with a bow on it at the end. The fact that he doesn't get kicked out of Starfleet is a little bit like, okay, that's just television, right? You could say, hey, they were, about to go to war. I mean, were we at war with the Dominion technically yet? Like, hey, we need people like him. And obviously, maybe there were people already in the background, the Section 31 sign saying, this could be a good operative for us, But yeah, it is a little bit convenient that he's not kicked out.
It sort of reminds me on the Drumhead TNG with the guy hiding his Romulan heritage, right?
Simon
and
Starfleet.
He knew that it was a conscious choice for him to not reveal that. And then that came out. So interesting. Yeah, you're right. He did.
He was another space twink.
Oh, yeah.
He's still quite attractive. He was on Voyager several years later when he grew up. He's still a looker even today. Something that really resonated with this episode with me though was Julian's relationship with his parents. The whole kind of embarrassment of them arriving on the station, the frosty relationship, and yeah, as someone who isn't particularly close to my own parents, I found it a very sad but relatable watch of you don't have anything in common. You want to get them off the station. Obviously, there's a secret to be kept. But yeah, this kind of aspect of your personality, of your identity, has caused a huge amount of conflict with your parents. And as a result, you're a stranger to your own family. So yeah, I found that quite difficult to watch personally.
I did as well. I have a father very similar to Julian's father, where there's always something on the next horizon and it's going to happen. I'm going to make my riches. And, you know, my dad's 76. I don't know.
He needs to get a move on.
It was very difficult to watch that relationship. And in part, and I don't know if Julian acting superior would be actually natural with his father, or if that's just the way he was written since day one.
I think it would be natural because of him finding out at a young age that he was genetically modified and then immediately being like, what, you changed who I was because you weren't satisfied with who I was, and holding that resentment over the years that just grows and grows and grows, and eventually you just can't even have a conversation or talk to them because you're just so like, who are these people? That was monstrous. Because as you grow older and you start going out into society, going out into the world and talking to other people, you look back at your past and your upbringing and what your parents maybe behaved as with fresh eyes, and so maybe it only made things worse.
Yeah, I think you see, okay, you get past the "they did this to me" thing, but automatically then Julian is that much smarter of a person, an individual. And to your point, Kelvin, you used the word losers, but they're just average Joes and may not be making the right choices in life or that. So you're going to look at them like, I'm smarter than them and I can see mistakes that they're making. I can see how they could have done this better. They could, and so there is going to be that. You totally get that from the father. The father's got his beef with Julian, that he thinks he's better than them and he's judging them. And, that is something that they brought on themselves in a sense. And there is fallout for that because the father does feel judged by Julian. As far as him not being as successful. So it's very complex, obviously.
Yeah.
And one thing that I like to what we talked about at the beginning, like, because this is such a huge, deep secret, this family secret, it almost makes sense that it's in late season 5. It sort of builds that because you're like, yeah, so much has happened and no one knows. For the past 5.5 years, no one knows this thing about Julian. It sort of adds to it. So I'm actually okay that it comes so late, although I can see a point for an argument to be made for coming earlier. But I think it builds that suspense and the gravity of this choice that his parents made.
How interesting, though, obviously episodic TV, the way it works, we're all very, very familiar, but how interesting would it have been for us, the viewers, to have known this secret leading up to, and then obviously there's the revelation of the character and everyone else finding out much, so I think that could have been a lot more powerful, but clearly episodes weren't written like that back in the days. But yeah. And then, before we move away from the parents, there was the element of comeuppance. The dad had to go to prison for 2 years. So what do we even think of that? Did the time serve the crime? Were we happy with that justice of 2 years in a light Federation penal colony working on his little designs? I don't know. It didn't really seem tantamount to child abuse for me. I don't think really fit the bill.
2 years just seemed very, very lenient.
Like I was saying, I felt like the way it ends is you create all this great drama and it's a great story. And then at the end, oh, it's all okay. It's swept under the rug. I mean, 2 years in it's like we make everything all right again. And that's the kind of flaw to some of Star Trek at times, that everything is hunky-dory by the end of the episode and it's time to move on to next week.
Because he was treated like Cleveland Booker, I guess.
Yeah, a great point. Yeah, absolutely. The ethical reset.
You guys, you're getting me hot.
Oh, you're turning red. You're literally turning red.
Okay, listen. What punishment would you have wanted to give him? What punishment could there be?
Okay.
He's already suffered. The deed has been done. It's 2 years? Absolutely. That fits the crime that was so long ago. Did you want him castrated? Did you want him hung up from a tree? Like,
Rora
what
Pente.
justice would there be? Could there be any justice for
The
that?
ice mines. The ice mines.
Amy, remember why this ban on genetic manipulation is in place. It's very, 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 very dangerous. One man's Julian Bashir could be the next man's Khan as a result of this.
Absolutely.
It's a very serious crime in the Federation. And
Genesis!
Which is why it shouldn't be done. But it was done.
Right. But Amy, when you have a crime and you're busted and you confess and you give a little slap on the face, does that discourage others from doing the same?
The
it's not a
parents will
deterrent.
never do
Oh,
this
look,
again.
he did it and he got 2 years in a fluff. And then it sets a precedent that if somebody does do it, then it's discrimination that you gave somebody else a very light sentence and you gave me a bigger sentence. So it sets a huge precedent for the next person to go do it because it got a real fluffy response from Starfleet. So.
And if you remember Altan Soong, yes, one of the many Soongs, he was incarcerated indefinitely in Enterprise when he was tinkering with all the eugenics embryos. So, he got locked up forever. Julian's dad got 2 years. So, yeah, maybe the Federation Judicial Service got a little bit more lenient after 100 years of dealing with augment crime.
My only beef with this episode is the sentencing at the end. It's a little bit too light-handed and very much the whole everything is okay. And we did all of this. We did this big upheaval, and at the end, there's very little consequences for those involved.
Shall we take a lighter look at this episode and explore a little bit of our B plot, if you will? So this is obviously the culmination of several episodes starting from Bar Association in season 4. Was lots of hints of Rom and Lita. Get it, will they, won't they? And now we've got Lewis Zimmerman thrown in for the most random love triangle you'll ever see, with great comedy effect and balance to the episode. Every episode needs a little bit of heart. What do you think of this love triangle, Amy?
I love it. And the reason why I love it is because last year on the cruise, I heard Chase Masterson talk about the romance that she had with Rom, and to hear her describe Rom and how Lita loves Rom and the acceptance and the being themselves, like, I am completely on board with these two getting together. And I just love that hesitancy because, my gosh, so many guys just don't know how to say, let me rephrase. So many people don't know how to say how they feel. And so we get that. It is so relatable. And you're like, do I just put it all out on the line? And yes, you have to if you want to make something special. So I'm in love with this storyline.
Mark, what do you think?
I think that maybe Lita sees in him someone that is looking at her as a full person and not just, her aesthetic, right? And she sees Rom in a way where, she sees what he's capable of more than what he might project. So it's almost like the reverse a little bit, And so they recognize in each other something that the rest of the world doesn't. And I think that's what makes them a great power couple.
Oh, that's a nice way of looking at it. What do you think, Christos?
Well, I think Rom is the great underdog of DS9. And if you look at his journey as starting off as, second fiddle to Quark, working in the bar, to, raising this son on the station who's kind of a little miscreant in the beginning and turns into quite the officer. And Rom becomes an engineer for the station. And then he gets Lita. And then he becomes the Grand Nagus. I mean, talk about the journey of a character from starting off at the very lowest, just kind of being a common everyday man who's to basically, becoming the head of a whole civilization. It's kind of like that message that, hey, things kind of turn out well for the underdog. And he gets the girl, he gets the, he gets everything in the end. And I think that's kind of, this episode progresses that journey for Rom as he just keeps on building in status as the show goes on. So I'm here for it. I love it.
What do you think, Kelvin?
I've seen this episode 100 times probably over the years, and it wasn't until I did my rewatch in prep for today that it really struck me how great an actor Max Grudenchik is in the kind of the physical comedy. And the two standout moments for me, one's at the beginning, one's at the end. But the beginning where Lita toddles over from the Dabo wheel and she's willing him to say something and he just says, bye, and then walks away. It had me in stitches. And I don't usually, I make no secret of the fact that the Ferengi episodes are not my favorite episodes. I often find that I know they're supposed to be the light relief to a very dark series, but the individual Rom episodes I really enjoy. And then at the end, when Louis Zimmerman's leaving and he's doing that big monologue and him and Lita are talking just after Lita and Rom have kissed, the performance of him just dumbstruck and almost swaying around because he's just been kissed by Lita is so physically funny. So I loved it for that reason. It's not something I would expect to love, but I love the charm of it. It's great. What about you, Mark?
If I just am I understanding you correctly, Kelvin, you've already explained that you do not like the Klingon episodes of Deep Space Nine. Now you're saying you do not like the Ferengi episodes of Deep Space Nine. Which episodes, pray tell, of Deep Space Nine do you actually like as the biggest Deep Space Nine fan, which you say that you are?
Oh my gosh, Mark, I love you so much. That's hilarious.
I know I've really just pulled at the tapestry of DS9 there. It's a bit threadbare, isn't it, now, without Ferengis and Klingons. I like any of the Kira and Dax episodes, of course. I'm quite keen on the religion and the political aspects. But yeah.
So if you take out the other characters, then you like Deep Space Nine. But if you throw in all of these other species, you're like, nah, I'll skip this one, I'll skip that one.
I like Quark, I like Rom, I love Nog. I think they're great in the regular ensemble episodes, but when it's a full Ferengi episode, they're not my favorite, of which there's only about half a dozen at the most. So yeah.
You don't like Moogie?
No.
Oh my god.
I really don't.
Who is Moogie played by? Oh my god, what's the actress' name?
Two actresses. They had an original actress in season 3, and then they got Cecily Adams from I think season 5 onwards.
She was fantastic. Love her.
Yeah, she's a funny actress. I just didn't hugely like the character. She tamed the Grand Nagus.
So back to the episode. And after their kiss, I love what the doctor said. true love must conquer all, or, something to that effect. I just thought that was the perfect response. And he was mature enough and was like, oh, yep, you didn't want me. Okay, I'll move on. What a healthy attitude to have when dating. I loved it.
Oh, Amy, I find it beyond interesting that that's how you read that exchange, because to me, I read it as, I didn't really care about you anyway. I just thought you were quite hot and I wanted to get you to Jupiter Station. And oh, look, here's another hot woman walking towards me now. Bye, Lita. It wasn't magnanimous. Rom, you win. You're the better man. It was just, oh well, it was worth a shot.
Doug Zimmerman was on Space Tinder.
Yeah, I took it as there's thousands of you out there. Next.
Yeah, absolutely. And what did we think about that kind of portrayal of Doctor? It was a bit creepy. I don't think that aged particularly well. He was quite predatory.
Well, yeah, and you see him. We see him again, right, in Voyager. Yeah, they continue that along. That's just who he is. But I mean, it takes two to tango. I mean, it's not like he's drugging anybody or doing anything. You know what I mean? Like that. It's pretty straightforward who he is. And
there's a little bit of that and there's a little bit of that in Voyager too, with Cass, and a little bit with 7 of 9. Let me teach you about human dating practices, and it's like
interesting.
Okay.
Mark, are you suggesting that Louis Zimmerman's womanizing ways have somehow become part of the EMH's matrix? And maybe the EMH is a little bit further.
I think I'm saying that pretty clearly. Yeah, I don't think there's any illusions. Yes, I think that's they sort of scanned his personality, and it's sort of over there. It might not be as strong, but yeah, there's definitely aspects of that within the Doctor's character. Now, I love the Doctor, but obviously, I recognize that about him as well.
Okay. If we're ranking creepy, weird, womanizing people on Star Trek, and there are many. Unfortunately, I would not put the Doctor at the top. I would put Bashir over the Doctor, in part because at the beginning, his infatuation with Lita and then with Jadzia, and it's like at least with Jadzia, it wasn't welcome. And with Lewis and Lita, she was very interested. She accepted the dinner date. She was having a good time. She was laughing and giving him eyes. Like, that was consensual. They both wanted it. And yeah, he was on the station for 2 weeks. That was it. So it's not like they were going to, go off and live the rest of their life. It was like, oh, here's an opportunity. I'd like to get to know you more. That's sort of how I was reading it. And then the last scene when the other woman walked by, oh, how are you? That's just Berman era Trek that I just have to push off and say whatever. But I don't get the major creep vibes from Robert
Maybe
Picardo.
I need to explain myself a little then. So there's two things I just very quickly want to come back to there, Amy. So when you mentioned about Jadzia and Julian, it was actually explicitly said in the dialogue for this episode when Zimmerman was giving the interviews to the senior staff, and he says to Jadzia, so are you implying he harassed you with unwanted sexual advances? And she said, no, but he was very persistent.
Right.
And playfully, she loved it. And that is why I love Dax, because she loved playing him along. And that's been dealt with too. But when you, what was the other point you just made then? So we said about Dax.
And then Zimmerman being on for 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's right. So there was, to me, and I don't want us to use too strong a word, but there was an element almost of grooming of, I've got you a job at Jupiter Station. You're going to be the manager of the cafe. You can live with me. It was all, trying to provide and, dare I say, buy Lita.
Okay.
And I didn't like it. I don't think it was just the flirtatious, you're hot, let's hook up. He was very much manipulating Ison. I didn't find it comfortable. That's not how I've won a man in the past. I've not got the maturity.
Yeah, I think it's kind of predatory because you go after a certain type of person, I suppose. I have been on the other side of a table on more than one occasion where I've had guys promising me is to as far, oh, you wouldn't even have to work. I'm like, yeah, and there goes all my freedom, stuff like that. So when you take somebody who may be like in a lesser position, I'm a Davo girl, for you're vulnerable because you're basically working in a bar on a space station, and offer them the world. Sometimes it's very easy to see yes, and then you're in that relationship, and then you're trapped and blah blah blah.
Well,
so
great. Okay. Now I'm re-imaging how I'm seeing this. Okay, all right.
Amy, we're here to make you wise to the world of men and all of
that's what the talk is all about.
So let's move things on a little and look at some assimilations and regenerations for the episode. For viewers and listeners, you'll remember that an assimilation is something that we loved about the episode and we want to assimilate it. With a regeneration, something we weren't too keen on and we want to kind of regenerate it into something better. So who wants to start us off? Mark, is there anything, any assimilations or regenerations that you've got?
Yes, there is something I see here in the list that really grabs me for an assimilation. And I want to talk about the hollow communicator that is here listed under regeneration, but I want to assimilate that because I noticed it. And when I saw it, I was like, hey, that's what they were doing in Discovery. That's what they were doing in Strange New Worlds. And I don't remember seeing that technology before, but here it is in Deep Space Nine. And I think that it sort of seeing it there makes me appreciate it more in Discovery and in Strange New Worlds. So like, oh, okay, they had it then too, so it makes sense to me. But had they not had it, it would have made less sense. So
yeah,
I think
just threw it on the list
cool
because it was just such an abandoned concept on Deep Space Nine. I think they used it in 2 or 3 episodes, and it just seemed a bit naff. So I find that really interesting that you loved that, and I tossed it on as something we could have done without.
I really liked learning about Nog's mom and sort of that contract that they have. Okay. And Quark's like, you signed a 5-year marriage contract and then you fell in love with her and then she left you for a richer man. Of course that was going to happen. What did you expect as a Ferengi? So to hear that was very interesting. And it just gave another level to Rom for me. Like, this guy, he's a romance guy. He's a romantic.
And I don't think Primadora's name was ever mentioned again, apart from in this episode. I think it's the one time you hear Nog's mother's name, and the fact that you get Ferengi marriage contracts and you can extend them to have children, and it's all governed and arranged by the father. And obviously Primadora is a traditional Ferengi woman, so it completely makes sense that you wouldn't see her because she was at someone's house all naked, chewing up the food. Christos, have you got any assimilations or regenerations for us?
I do. I am very much reminded by a short story that was in Star Trek Explorer called Broken Oaths. And it is literally the debate happening at Starfleet Medical about the introduction of the EMH. And there's the whole short story is basically Zimmerman versus Crusher, talking about, is it ethical to have these doctors and should we be putting this into Starfleet? And, does it take away the bedside manner and the human element of medicine and whatnot? So it kind of goes back to that whole, is there one on is there an EMH everywhere? And obviously in this particular episode, we're trying to further the EMH program and not even have it be EMH. It's actually going a step further now that this is a full-time doctor. And like I said, I just get this particular episode reminds me very much of this story. And even Admiral McCoy shows up in that short story in the debate. So it's in Star Trek Explorer, and I think it's in a couple of other. I think there's a new book that has a lot of these short stories in it that just got released. But anyways, it's called Broken Oath, and I think it's a really good read for anybody who might want to get a little bit more backstory there.
Amazing. Mark?
So one of the things I love about Deep Space Nine is their characters really seem more realistic than in some of the other Star Treks. Like we see the idealism in TNG for sure, and a lot of that as well in Voyager. But with Deep Space Nine, you have characters that are multifaceted. And something that I was reminded of by watching this episode is during the pandemic, I think, a lot of us had bubbles, right? We had a core group of maybe a couple, 2 or 3 people. We would hang out with them. We'd be tested, but we would spend time with these couple of people. And in my bubble was a couple that lived right down the end of the hall from me, and they also had a dog that played with my dog. And they were of the polar opposite political spectrum from me, and voted differently than I did. But we had a lot more in common than what divided us politically. And we spent a lot of time together. And I'm bringing this up because I want to bring up how douchey Quark was in this episode. Now, it's listed again under regeneration. But, what I get out of it is you see him at the beginning of Deep Space Nine being a swindler, trying to cheat people, whatever. But he also is somebody that has the capability to be kind, to do the right thing, to stick around when other people, write him off. And here, this is just Quark being Quark and he's almost like the right winger of Deep Space Nine. Women have, their place in the kitchen and all this, and we kind of eye roll. But he's definitely somebody that maybe I wouldn't agree with politically, but he might be in my bubble for other reasons. I might enjoy hanging out with him for other reasons. So this just showed, yes, Quark was being a douche, but it's definitely the writers remembered who Quark was, and this is totally Quark.
Okay, talking about Quark, this is for me a huge regeneration, but I'm not sure if you guys will agree. I don't know. So when Rom finds out that Lita's going on this date and talking to Quark, and he's like, well, if you're feeling lonely, here's a new holosuite program, Vulcan Part 2 or whatever. And I'm like, you literally are going to recommend a replacement of human interaction for a holosuite. I'm not okay with that. And that's how we can get holosuite addiction. That's how we can withdraw from life, because you're not interacting with actual humans, that you just go to a holosuite. I'm not a fan of that. What do you guys think? Or am I just overthinking it?
Well, I just think to kind of suggest that your brother just goes off and cracks one off is kind of a bit creepy and a bit weird in itself. Thank you. I would never say that to my brother. That's for sure.
I mean, to the extent it's like recommending porn. Like, here you go. Go watch some porn. Would you do that?
No. But yeah, the kind of the douchey aspect of Quark I was getting at on the regeneration was really that Lita has confided in Quark that she's in love with Rom. Rom has confided in Quark that he's in love with Lita. And Quark is just saying to their faces, well, I don't think she's into you. He is, he could have been nice and said to his brother, give it a go. I think she likes you. But it was Quark being Quark. You're absolutely right, Mark. He doesn't want his brother to have a relationship with a Bajoran woman. But
I think he was doing it to be manipulative. He figured if his brother was happy, maybe he would stop working at the bar. Maybe she would stop working at the bar. He needs them both to be continuing to be doing what they're doing, even if it makes their lives crap. Now, that's awful. It is awful. But at the end of the day, like I said in my previous statement, like, it's Quark. I still love Quark. And when these things come up, it's like, yeah, that's Quark. I don't appreciate that about him. Obviously, it's awful. But there's other things they bring up within the 7-year run of the show that make Quark very endearing.
Yeah, because he even tells Lita, well, Rom's an engineer. He likes smart women. Like, come on now, to her face. Rude.
Yeah. One final regeneration from me, and I don't know how you feel about this one, Christos, was during the interview scene, and Worf just says to Dr. Zimmerman, "I do not like doctors, any doctors." And I automatically, at the very first viewing, I thought, what about Beverly?
Yep.
Is that a horrible dig that Worf's just had at Bev?
Oh, we
Well,
all hated
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I mean, Worf and Bev had their definite evolution. If you go back to some episodes in season 3 and 4, he's very
Ethics.
condescending to Beverly, kind of like in the High Ground, and what's the one with, is it Legacy, the one with Tasha Yar's sister?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like she's had to order him and pull rank on him on more than one occasion because of his views toward her, women, and I think doctors. And they got better, obviously, toward the end. I don't take this as a dig, though. I think that's just Worf and being a Klingon and not liking doctors. You know, I don't like what doctors do. I mean, they don't want to be told there's something wrong with you. They don't want to be told to go eat right, go whatever, go exercise, go do. They just don't like to be told what to do. I don't take it as a dig to Bev, but there is a history between Worf and Bev that wasn't always perfect, is what I was trying to get at there.
Yeah, when I heard that comment, I just went directly to TNG's ethics.
Yes, I mean, like at that, he was ready to kill himself than try to even get fixed.
Yep.
So,
Okay, let's move on to a little bit of trivia for the episode. I'm going to jump in and start because I've got a personal connection to one of these, but I always found it interesting that in pre-production for Voyager, the original idea was to call the EMH Dr. Zimmerman. This whole concept of the Doctor not having a name, that was the character's name, Dr. Zimmerman. And to the point where I used to have a poster on my childhood bedroom wall of the big space scene with the Voyager, the ship, and the little character heads, season 1 profiles. And it said on that poster, Dr. Zimmerman underneath. So the fact that they got so far into production and changed their mind at the very last minute and then recycled this aspect to make Dr. Zimmerman the human creator character, and here he is on Deep Space Nine. I just love that. I just love the little detail of it, the continuity. What else have we got? Mark, do you want to go for one?
Yeah, I love this trivia. Producer Ron Moore, that's Ronald D. Moore, added the heartfelt exchange between Bashir and his parents, where they explain the sorrow of seeing young Jules struggling in school and falling behind. Episode writer Jimmy Diggs became very emotional when told this, as he had a daughter with learning disabilities, and it all hit very close to home. Yeah, I can't imagine. But it's like, you know, that's what when Star Trek's at its best, it's pulling from things that we can all relate to in our own lives. And I think they did a great job here.
Amy, what have you got for us?
Well, Admiral Bennett refers to the eugenics wars being 200 years earlier, but it was actually known to be 1996. So a lot closer to 300 years. From 1996 to 2373, Ron Moore admits when called out on this, he says, "Oh, just didn't do the math."
Ooh,
They
how would
needed
you
to
grade
hire
it?
me.
what a Amy's math moment.
Yes.
And then a lot of this got retconned in Picard season 2 as well.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. I always thought it was interesting to explore Bashir's heritage in this. So obviously he's got a very strong, Siddig's got a very strong British accent, and we just accept him as a Brit. But you know, having the ethnicity of his character explored by meeting his parents, and the DS9 companion actually mentioned that the casting of his mother was really problematic because they were insistent that they wanted an Arab American to play Julian's mum, but it became really problematic because there were no actors or actresses of that descent, because of the Muslim religion would frown upon the acting as a profession for a woman. So they really struggled, and they eventually found the lady who did play Julian's mother, Fadwa El Gaidina, who was a social anthropology professor at the University of Southern California. So I just thought how interesting that was such a a casting head scratcher, almost an oxymoron, if you will.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, it's probably time we moved on to our final thoughts for this episode. So, Christos, do you want to start us off? How did you feel rewatching and revisiting this milestone episode of DS9?
Yeah, I like I was saying with my opening, I really like this episode. I feel it's a very strong episode, and just from our debate, you can tell there's a lot of meat in this episode because it's had us talking quite a bit. My only like I said, my only drawback to this episode is I felt the punishment at the end did not kind of fit the crime, so to speak. And that's the only thing I would change about this episode, I think, is that the father would have gotten a stricter punishment.
Yeah. And how about you, Mark? What are your final thoughts?
This episode really lays the foundation for what would become of some of our favorite characters in Deep Space Nine. I didn't realize until I started rewatching that this was sort of the foundation of the Rom-Lita relationship. This, obviously did a great deal to progress Julian's story, even his relationship with Miles. So there's a lot to mine there. And so I appreciated that. I love it, especially, like I said at the beginning, like Deep Space Nine, the character development is something that we didn't get as much of in some of the other iterations of Trek, but they do it so well in Deep Space Nine, and that's why I love this episode.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And Amy, what are your closing statements?
Really good episode. It's so meaty. And one thing that Deep Space Nine, Star Trek does is showing both sides of an argument, of an issue. And I totally believed what his parents were doing. They were trying to do it best. I totally understand why Bashir feels like he wasn't appreciated. He wasn't recognized of who he was, that he had to be changed. Like, these are meaty issues that extend to us in our day. And it just makes for great conversation, which I think we've had. And yes, the Rom and Lita, absolutely love it. What a fun episode.
Love it. Love it. This episode came immediately on the back of such a huge Dominion war episode with, Worf and Martok in the internment camp and Dukat defecting to the Dominion and all of the Jem'Hadar coming through the wormhole. And that was epic. For this to have no villains, no peril, it be 100% character driven for Bashir and Rom, and still be such a formative episode in the timeline of DS9. Amazing. Great choice. I'm so glad we covered this. So that's enough genetic engineering for 1 week. Mark, where are we going next week?
Next week, we will be beaming into our medical ethics series again. This is going to be part 7. And we are going to be... I'm gleeful, covering Strange New Worlds, Lift Us Where Suffering Cannot Reach. So much, I can't even get into how much this episode is cool, from the really awesome cinematography to the character development to just the twist at the end that I did not see coming. But now, rewatches, it's like, oh, okay, they were laying the seeds. I can't wait for us to all rewatch this great Strange New Worlds episode and discuss it.
Fab. That should be fresh in the memory. It was only on TV a few weeks ago, or so it seems. Amy's shaking her head. I think Amy needs a rewatch.
Yes, I do. I could not tell you one thing about this episode.
We're not all great with the episode titles of New Trek,
Yeah.
are we? So which one's this? Fabulous. Excellent. Right, well, we would love to hear what you thought of today's episode and hope you'll join in our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, and continue our discussion there. You can also tweet your thoughts to @AllGoodPod. Please follow the network on Twitter and Instagram @BQN Podcasts. We've also partnered with our friends at Fandom Podcast Network, where you can find us by searching the master feed. So, Christos, where can people find you when you're not resequencing the DNA of all the guys in San Diego?
You can find me in the BQN Collective on Facebook for sure, and on Twitter and Instagram at either Greek Geek SD or at What's the Tea Bev. And Amy, where can people find you when you're not playing Cupid with Rob and Lita?
Well, when I'm not doing that, you can find me here on the network where I'm co-hosting Galaxy Class, which is all about Next Generation, and Union Federation. I am on Twitter at Miss Amy Nelson, but my favorite place right there on Facebook are BQN Collective. So, Mark, where can people find you when you're throwing darts blindfolded?
Well, when I'm not doing that or making art, you can find me on the BQN Facebook page. You can also find me if you become a patron of the network on Patreon, where I host a show called It's Green. And you can find me on Twitter at MarkWhite207. Kelvin, where can people find you when you are not turning your lobes to listen to all the great podcasts here on the BQN?
Oh, I'm already on that frequency. You don't need to worry about that one, Mark. But when I'm not tuning my lobes, you can find me on Facebook in the BQN Collective and also on Instagram and Twitter at Kelvin's Timeline.
Please hit the subscribe button on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a star rating and a written review. That helps others to find our show. You can also follow the entire network's podcast with our master feed by searching BQN. This way you won't miss any of our fine shows like Union Federation, Galaxy Class, History with the Szilagyi, Infinite Diversity, Mickey's Marvels, Sasquatch, What's the Tea Bev, and Trexpert's Quiz.
At this time, we would like to thank our associate producers, Mahendran Radhakrishnan and Tim Cooper. A special thanks to Graham Kelly for our opening and closing music, and to Mark White for our Starfleet Medical endorsed artwork each and every week.
If you'd like to help us keep all of our shows coming to you each week, you can become a patron of the network on Patreon. We will add you to the Hive Mind Facebook group so you can enjoy It's Green, Amy's Math Moments, and other network perks. With a monthly subscription of $5 or more, you can join our meetings on the Hive Mind Roundtable discussion on the second Saturday of each month. Visit patreon.com/BQN to get all the details and watch your messages.
Thank you for listening.
We hope you'll join us
As we search out
All good things.